found it. Do you ever get halfway through a crafting project or an upcycling project and then change your mind? It's exactly what happened to me. I thought I'd give this kitchen stool a really quick makeover. I thought just paint the legs, leave the top in the natural pine. And then I started watching a video on YouTube, and it was one by Yvonne, the GingerChick Rehab, and she was showing how to make a checkerboard pattern on the top. And I thought, aha, I reckon I could do that too. So it's not too late to change my mind. I'm going to take off the newspaper and masking tape, sand down the top of my stool, and then get my black and white acrylic paints out and paint my own, what I'm going to call gingham over on the top. And by coincidence, I'm going to upload this video as part of Yvonne's Sunday Funday challenge, which she co-hosts with Yanni and Diane over in Deco Easy in the Netherlands. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie, the florist that teaches. I host flower arranging classes, including Flower Start, which is my online flower arranging class. Normally my videos are about arranging fresh flowers and sharing hints and tips of the trade with you, but sometimes I do cross over into crafting activities. So having decided that I now want to make a gingham pattern on top of my stool, I need to take off the newspaper and masking tape, which was screening off the natural pine wood finish to the top of this stool. I'm going to be using my electric sander just to rough up the edges of the stool in order that the paint finish gets a really good key. There'll be loads of other videos to check out in this Sunday Funday playlist. I've left the details of the playlist in the show notes underneath this video. For this project, I'm going to be using some masking tape, and I've got a tape measure, some black and white acrylic paint and an old saucer and a sponge roller, which I'm going to use to dab on my paint. The first thing I'm going to do is to measure the width of the top of my stool. I want to make sure that my stripes, my check pattern, is as evenly spaced as possible, so I don't end up with an uneven looking pattern. So having found the midway point of my stool, I then measure across with my first piece of masking tape, putting the centre of the masking tape directly along the centre of the stool. This piece of masking tape is going to be my guide piece, so I'm not sticking it down really tightly, because in a moment I'm going to lift it up. So I rip off the tape and then place a second piece of tape alongside, and this piece of tape is going to be the more permanent piece of tape. So I'm lining it up to make sure there aren't any gaps, and then really securely attaching it to the top of the stool. And then take a third piece of tape and put it on the other side of that first piece. So I've got 3 pieces of tape, but what I'm going to do is to peel off the middle section of tape, and that will give me a bare stripe of wood. And then, having peeled off that section of tape, I then line it against the next piece of tape, and again I'm just adding it down lightly because I know I'm going to peel this off next time, and then I add the next strip. So basically I'm using that piece of tape as a spacer, and then I'll end up with stripes going across of tape, bare wood, across the whole of my stool. And when I have worked my way out from the centre up to the top of the stool, I'll do exactly the same thing, working from the centre down to the bottom edge of the stool. I'm going to be leaving these pine sections of my stool plain, so the checkboard pattern will be made up of 4 colours: the plain, the white, a light grey, and then a darker charcoal grey. So I'm starting off by squeezing out some acrylic paint onto a plate, and then I will be using my sponge dabber to sponge my way along the stripes. I'm not using a paintbrush because I'm just slightly concerned that the bristles of the paintbrush might get underneath my tape and will give me a less distinct line. So I'm just going on lightly with a dabbing, a bouncing motion going up and down the stripes, and I will come back and add in a second coat of the paint just to make sure I've got really good coverage. I've speeded up this section of film. I just love the way it looks like the paint goes on magically, but I am bouncing the paint up and down rather than painting it in strips from side to side. As my first coat was really light, I pretty much went straight back in and added in my second coat, again in another light layer. And then when my paint was dry,
I peeled off the layers. Unfortunately, as you can see, I've got a really crisp line, so I was really pleased with this finish. Rather than throw these strips of masking tape away, I'm actually saving them, and I'll show you what I use them for in the next clip. I'm now ready to add in the second set of masking tape lines. So I've twisted my stool around, I've turned it round 90 degrees. Originally the white lines were running horizontally and now they are running vertically. And what I'm doing here is exactly the same thing as I did before, finding the middle of the stool so that I can put my first piece of masking tape centrally across the stool, and that'll give me a nice even placement of my checked pattern moving from the centre of the stool to the outer edges. Now you'll see here that I'm reusing my masking tape, as you can see by the telltale white paint lines. It's entirely up to you whether you want to do this. You may find it easier to use brand new pieces of tape each time, but I was conscious of the fact that I didn't want to be too wasteful, and I didn't actually have that much masking tape left on my reel, so I did actually get 2 lots of use out of this tape, but I did use brand new tape for the third set of lines. So I'm doing exactly the same thing as I did before. I'm working from the centre to the top of my stool, and when I have done that side, I'll then work from the centre down. As I had some excess of the white acrylic paint left, I covered it up with some cling film so it didn't dry out, because I'm going to use the white paint to mix with a bit of black to then start grading my colours down through a light grey and then to a charcoal grey colour. So I'm starting off again with adding a bit more of the fresh white acrylic paint, and then I'll add in a dab of the black acrylic paint and mix the two together until I'm happy with the shade that I get. I didn't add in enough black paint to begin with, so I did end up adding in a few more dabs, and then when I got that sort of mid-grey colour, I started off with my sponge painting again. So using exactly the same technique as before, I dab my end of my sponge roller into the paint, and then I damp off some of the excess onto the saucer, and just aiming for a light coverage, and then I'll go back in and add in a second coat. So you'll notice here that my grey stripes are running horizontally across the screen, and you can just see the white stripes running vertically across. I don't take off the horizontal strips of masking tape like I did before. This time I'm going to add in another set of strips covering up the original white paint. So because the masking tape is see-through, I can see quite easily where I've previously painted, and just work my way following the grid lines from one side of the stool across to the other. And when I finish my taping, I'm going to start with my last layer of paint. I've saved my paint that I've been using by putting a piece of cling film over the saucer each time so it doesn't dry out, and I'm going to make a slightly darker shade of grey by adding in some more black. When I'm happy with the shade of paint I've got, it's time to get painting, or sponging I should say. So I dip the end of my sponge into the paint, dab off the excess, and then, as before, work my way up and down the stool. Yvonne also has a really good tip about drying your paint between times using electric hairdryer, which speeded up the process a little bit. I added in 2 coats of the dark charcoal colour, and here I am starting to peel off the masking tape. I was a bit nervous at this point, but it all worked out really, really well. And to finish off, I wanted to go around the edge of the seat of the stool just to tie everything together. So I mixed up all those odds and ends of paint and got myself a really, really dark, rich charcoal grey colour, and I sponged that on the edge of the stool just to bring the whole look together. And here is my finished stool. In fact, it's not just any old stool now. I'm using it as a display area for my pot plants and vases of flowers. I've got a beautiful vase here of zinnias. So huge thanks to Yvonne at the GingerChick Rehab for sharing this technique with me and giving me the confidence to have a go myself. So don't forget to check out Yvonne's channel at GingerChick Rehab, and Yanni and Diane over at Deco Easy, and of course the playlist of everyone else who's joining in with the Sunday Funday challenge.